this is where we found ourselves. Welcome to the local show. People you work with, people you know.
Welcome to our season premiere of The Local Show, guys. I'm Erik Skarvin, your host. Thanks for joining us as we kick off another winter series here on The Local Show. We shoot each week here at GrassRoots Community Network at the Red Brick Center of the Arts in Aspen. So honored and excited to have a first-time guest on the show. It's about time, you guys. He has skied all the 14ers in Colorado, actually the first man in history to ski all the 14ers. Has skied everywhere from Aspen to the Tetons to the Alps. So excited to welcome Lou Dawson to the show. Welcome, Lou.
Thanks, Erik.
It's really fun to have you and finally meet you, too.
Yeah, likewise.
This is all exciting.
Surprising we hadn't met before.
I know, it's crazy.
You know, a few years back running around Hunter Creek or something.
Exactly, which is actually my backyard. I live right
Yeah.
at the base of Hunter Creek Trail.
I gather that from your columns.
Back there.
And stuff.
So it's an honor to have you. I really
Thank
appreciate you taking the time. And of course, we're going to hit on your new book. We'll show this a little bit more later, Avalanche Dreams. But first, we want to kind of get to know you, you know, first of all, as a family man. I mean, that's a big theme in the book, is the importance of family. And
Yes.
you have a growing family. And can you just talk about, I mean, there's a lot there, but, you know, the evolution of the importance of family in your life, you know, through the years from childhood on up. How would you kind of, I guess, summarize that?
Well, I think my grandfather and his generation, it was all about that. Family was everything. And then as my life progressed, my parents were involved in more the hippie lifestyle, which I get into in my book. And their idea of family sort of became, I would call it diluted, and maybe diluted, but, you know, maybe both things. But I think there was actually some neglect and at that time, and it caused me, and I have 3 other brothers, and all of us have, as the years progressed, we all became devoted family men. And I think that was wise. There's kind of a reaction to that 60s stuff that went on.
Right.
But anyway, my life went through a series of phases where I was a big climber, just was really enjoyed risking my life, basically. You know, total adrenaline addict.
Right. The thrill, the rush.
And then a period of questioning and dysfunction, that things didn't work out too well, and some accidents, and then really realizing that my life wouldn't be complete without marriage and a child and all that proceeds from that. And, you know, kind of a pretty average progression for a lot of people, going from the younger years to your middle age and on through.
So you feel pretty balanced right now overall with the
Yes.
family kind of, you know?
Yeah, it's been wonderful to experience that balance.
Yeah.
Because one thing I saw through the years is, you know, anybody, including myself, can get stuck in stuff. For example, adrenaline sports.
Yeah.
And that can be good for a while because you can be devoted and get really good at something and express your creativity and your athletic skills and create a lot of value in other people's lives because they can be inspired. But after a while, your body isn't what it used to be and things like that. And if you just try to keep that level going, a lot of times it's not pretty.
Right.
You know, sometimes it is. You know, there are individuals, like we were talking about the old bowl guys.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
a little while ago, and you know, then you get inspiration from the old guys who can somehow have the DNA to be able to hike the bowl and ski it when they're in their 80s. You know?
I think like guys like Klaus and Nick Kuhn and Klaus Obermeyer must have had some pretty good genes with their families, and that's obviously
so.
part of it. You know?
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
You have to run what you brung.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody's body's different and has different lifespans are different.
So how do you get that rush now? Like, do you still enjoy getting out skiing? And
yeah,
you know, what's that like?
I take it kind of every day as it comes. You know,
Okay.
depending on what's going on with my health. You know, some years I'm doing more uphilling, and we have a cabin in Marble.
Nice.
So we'll go up there and do some backcountry skiing, And then some years or some months, I'm not feeling as good, so I just go enjoy our cabin. I'm a real lover of mountains.
Yeah.
And I can be just sitting there and watching the moon and the stars and be with my wife, and that's enough, We do have a wood-fired hot tub at the cabin.
I love that.
Which, it was a mandatory creation dictated by my wife.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is.
That
Have you ever
sounds
seen
incredible.
one of those things?
No, I mean, I've heard of them,
No,
of course.
they're really
but...
cool. It's got this thing called a snorkel stove.
Oh.
And it's an aluminum stove that's immersed in the water.
Oh, neat.
So it's super efficient. You put a few logs in there and get it started up, and it heats the thing to hot tub temperature from creek temperature in a couple of hours.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's like heats it as good as an electric heater in a jacuzzi.
That's amazing. And then makes your sweetie happy, which is important.
And in return, makes me very happy. So.
Right. Happy wife, happy life. Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, I really like that. And, there was one day I was up there by myself a few years ago, and there was I had the XM radio rigged up so I could listen to it. And this guy came on. I was listening to I think it was a jazz station. And this guy came on, and this beautiful piano song started playing. And at that moment, I looked out the window, and literally the first snow of December started to sift down. And I thought, God, this song goes so well with the snow. I can't believe it. And when the song was over, the DJ goes, "Oh, that song was named First Snow."
No way.
By such and such. Yeah.
Wow.
This is no lie.
Wow.
And I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. This guy's first snow song, and here's my first snow. So I actually got a hold of the musician. And it was back when I was doing the my Wild Snow website. And I was fiddling around with a few videos. So I gathered up a bunch of still photographs of skiing and a bunch of quotes that I really liked. Like go to the mountains, get their good tidings, and all that stuff. I got a hold of the musician and got permission to use the song to put the music under for this little video I made.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. I forgot the guy's name. It's been a while, but it was a really good, one of those serendipitous experiences of the mountains that you can seek and you may not find, but they're going to happen at some point.
Right, or law of attraction, right?
Yeah,
it's
the
just
law
like
of attraction.
That energy pulls in more of the same, and we're like magnets and that whole thing.
And the blessings.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about that a little more, because there's a real, like a core feeling, a joy. Some people call it in the flow, when they're when they're doing what they really love, their passion, what's in their heart. And can you expound upon that? Like, describe that joy that you get, whether it's, you're out with your family, or you're in the backcountry, you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
You're doing what you love, whether it's skiing or hiking or some other activity. Can you just talk about that kind of just basic primal kind of feeling and joy?
There's the flow state that's been pretty well documented now.
Ooh, don't we love it?
Yeah, and it's worth trying to achieve that.
Yeah.
That's for sure, because it puts, my feeling is it kind of gets you into the state of, say, like when our cat goes out and hunts mice. That cat is obviously in the flow state.
Oh, yeah.
And animals achieve it really easily. I think maybe they're just in it all the time. I don't know. Are they? Because you're a dog lover, so.
Yeah, I think they are. I think Marley's looking at her paw watch right now, and she's probably not in her flow because I'm not there.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting.
You broke the flow.
That's an interesting observation. I broke her flow probably by leaving.
Yeah.
She's still getting up to speed on being on the set. She's a little energetic as a young lab. But talk about that a little.
I haven't thought about this a lot. It's kind of getting into the philosophical realm, but I think the joy of the mountains and the joy of the backcountry and the wilderness and just nature, as I kind of like calling it the nature, like when you're talking to somebody from Germany or something, and they kind of that European way of saying it. They'll say, I went to the nature and went for a hike, and I think. that feeling you get when you're in the nature it's not the flow state so much. I think you're just experiencing, like, I'm a man of faith, and I believe God created all this stuff and all this beauty, and I feel like when you experience the nature like that, you're experiencing the Creator.
Yeah.
That's my feeling about it. My philosophical belief.
I'm with you,
if you will. But I think, to me, that's where a lot of that joy comes from. And the other thing is, I think causes that is it's a land of contrast. Your house can be too. Maybe the shower goes bad and you get a blast of cold water, or, or maybe your relationship isn't working so well. So, life is always a matter of contrast. But when you get out in the nature, the contrasts sometimes get really abrupt and harsh. And thus, when you're on the side where it feels good and you're warm and your athletics are feeling good, or you're in the hut and having dinner, then you can feel that glow and that joy because you have some contrast. It's the old philosophical trope of, you can't have the good without the bad, or the bad without the good.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason hut trips are so cool. You go up, you skin in there, and sometimes you're carrying a little extra weight because you might have a little bit of vino, or maybe a lot of vino. And,
that's where you get the strongest, skiers to carry,
right,
the most important heavy
the
objects.
ones that need a workout,
right,
like you.
right.
But anyway, and then you get to the hut, and you've kind of maybe it's not even that hard of a trip to the hut, but it's winter and you've stomped through the snow, and then you get to the hut and it's all warm and cozy in there, and amazing contrast.
That contrast, and it feels so good because you put in the work too, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of the old.
Yeah, you burn off some calories. You don't have to be guilty about what you're eating. And,
right.
So.
Earning turns and more. Up at the hut. That's one of my favorite things. That sounds like that's one of your favorite experiences, because then you share that with people that you really have affection for, your friends and family.
And one thing I came to really like over the last 20 years is the European hut scene, which is a little different. Most of the huts there are very communal, as opposed to ours here, which tend to be one group.
Okay.
The 10th tried that for a while to make those huts communal, and I think some of them still are, but some are one group huts. But the ones in Europe are a lot more rowdy. Well, no, that's the wrong word, because the ones here are rowdy too. I've had to sleep under the table a few times and forgot my earplugs, and it was a disaster. But I guess what I'm saying is, you go into these ones in Europe and there's a heck of a lot of people a lot of times.
Right.
And it's rowdy by default. It's a bunch of people singing, ski songs in German and slinging who knows what kind of booze, and so
you have to do proper preparation for that, it sounds like. This is
yeah.
another level. This is
it's
like
kind of
Huts 2.0.
It's kind of
the original Hut people.
Yeah, it's Hut 2.0. but anyway, we just, my wife and other friends of mine that have experienced that, it's sort of like you're going home to where it all began.
Yeah.
These places in Europe, in Switzerland and Italy and Germany and points beyond, Norway.
Incredible.
And you really get an idea of how many people get value out of doing that, and it's pretty cool.
That sounds amazing. That's still on my what I call bike it list.
Yeah,
places to adventure around the world.
You're in the biking over there, which I've not been able to do, and I don't know if I ever will be able to do it now. But God, some of that stuff, like the thing they call the Transalp, where you ride across the Alps and go to all these huts and stay in them and stuff. It's unbelievable.
Oh my gosh, it's all waiting, and, being a big cyclist myself. And skier, all that stuff's just waiting. And
well, and it's an interesting experience because, growing up around here and becoming a mountaineer, a lot of it was always about solitude. Like you go up to climb Capitol Peak in 1975 and you were probably not going to see anybody.
Right.
And, you know, and that's changed a lot. But the thing about ski touring in the Alps, say, is you're pretty much going to be along with a couple of hundred of your best friends, no matter what you're doing, you know. And you better be ready for that.
Right.
And embrace it.
Right.
You know, as this sort of human endeavor, you know. And because I was writing for Wildstone, my successful website, you know, it was very easy, like with Lisa and I going over there and just yucking it up and getting to know the people that were on the same hike, you know, and stuff like that. There was no resentment, you know, just positivity. And that's, you know, and I know you're all about that.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Yeah.
when you have the positivity like a Klaus Obermeyer in your own community to tap
my
into,
gosh. Yeah.
that just drives his life to ski at 104 last winter.
Oh, man.
104 years young, we like to say, right?
Unbelievable.
That's from a positive outlook, you know.
Yeah.
That's just almost, you can't put a dent in it, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just unshakable. It's really impressive, and it's really inspiring.
Yeah, it occurs to me that, you know, trying to get into positivity all the time is key, but it's hard sometimes.
Oh, man.
And yeah, maybe one of the things you can do, I hadn't really thought this through, but is if you get that little hit of the nature every day,
Yes,
maybe that kind of gives you an extra boost of positivity.
I agree.
And and then thinking about it, and then, you know, maybe even the planning and that sort of thing. And apparently the positivity is a lot of what keeps you healthy and alive. So, you know.
No doubt. I mean, I was just talking to a friend yesterday who's also a grief and loss counselor, and
Yeah.
you know, it manifests in our own physicality, right? If we're down and we're grinding, or we're depressed, or we're angry, and we're stewing in that area for a while, that'll change us at a cellular level, right? So it literally changes us. It could create disease, right? It could create a tumor on the negative end, or you could drive your life with longevity, quality of life. I mean, no one wants to live to 104 if they're staring at the ceiling.
No.
But if they have a quality of life, they're windsurfing in Maui, you know, they're riding road bikes into their 90s, you know, that's a big lesson, I think, that we can all, I mean, you've obviously, you know, learned that lesson, and, you know, the importance of positivity. We're going to talk about like keys to safety. In fact, we got to take a quick break here and rehydrate.
Yeah.
For some really heavy talking intervals and endurance talking, Lou. Those are both the conversation we have coming up. So we're going to take a quick break.
Yeah.
Sounds intimidating.
I can think back in the past.
Use your fear management skills. Get ready for the second main body of the show. We're going to take a quick break, you guys. We do need to recognize our winter underwriters that make this series happen, starting with our premiere with Lou Dawson here, first time on the show. I want to thank Haiti Children, Klug Properties, Local Spirits, Paradise Bakery, Picken County Solid Waste Center, Sundog Athletics, and last but not least, the Wheeler Opera House. We'll go to our only break of the show, guys. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Lou Dawson. And we're going to touch on his new book, Avalanche Dreams, and so much more, so don't go away. At the Wheeler Opera House, we set the stage for connections that create memories for our audiences, artists, and greater Aspen community. At the Wheeler Opera House, all are welcome. You're welcome to be a part of history.
Living in Aspen is more than just owning a home. It's about embracing a way of life. I'm Chris Klug, and I've spent my life immersed in everything this mountain community has to offer, from skiing and snowboarding to art and culture. I understand what makes Aspen special. Discover the Aspen lifestyle with a broker who truly understands it.
Want to live like a local? Help us reduce food waste, a major contributor to climate change.
You can help in 3 simple ways.
Plan menus carefully and only buy what you need.
Collect unused scraps for compost.
Buy ugly fruits and vegetables.
Reduce food waste. Live like a local.
Locally owned and operated, Local Spirits has low prices, a convenient location next to Exxon gas station with parking, and is Aspen's exclusive cigar dealer. 3% back with our loyalty program. Sundog Athletics, Aspen's adventure sports school and snowshoeing specialists since 1996. Brought to you by Paradise Bakery and Gelateria, serving Aspen for 42 years.
Welcome to the local show. People you work with, people you know.
Thanks for sticking with us here on the Local Show, guys. We're going for a 1-hour special today, and we're going to focus on Avalanche Dreams now, Lou's most recent book. And Lou, Avalanche Dreams sounds kind of scary. Like that sounds kind of like a nightmare when you talk about just the word avalanche. Conjures up kind of a lot of emotion and, like I say, fear. And how'd you come up with the name Avalanche Dreams?
Well, the name is the technique of making a list of words, two columns of words that might relate to each other's. Using avalanche as a modifier.
Okay.
And then dreams as, as the noun or the verb, however you want to look at it. It's kind of a vague thing, but it's supposed to be a little poetic.
Okay. Well, it's go ahead. Sorry. There's so much involved there.
Yeah, and there's the nightmare of the avalanche, but there's also a beauty in the danger. And I think we see that when we go out there. Those of us who've actually experienced avalanches, been in them, there's no real beauty to that. To me, there isn't anyway. Right. But when you see an avalanche from afar and you watch them, they're fascinating creatures, and there's a beauty to that danger. Yeah. So when coming up with the term avalanche dreams kind of brings both those aspects of the avalanche into play. The beautiful avalanche that you watch from a distance, and then the one that maybe you get caught in, that you dream about for the rest of your life.
Reminds me of moose. You'd like to see the moose from a distance, but not necessarily come around the corner and there's the moose.
Yes.
So there's kind of a proximity thing going on there, but there's also the beauty, right? What I thought about was all that goes into a skiing adventure or backcountry skiing. There's that whole beauty and the planning, the process, the athletics, the camaraderie. Talk about the big picture.
Yeah, and when you pull off one of those trips, that could be an avalanche dream.
Right.
Because you're dealing with avalanche potential all the time. No matter how good the snowpack, no matter where in the world you are, if the snow's thick enough to ski and it's tilted, there is always, if maybe a faint possibility, but there's always a possibility of the snow sliding. So, and then it being a memoir, having that theme run through the book of the avalanche kind of as a real specter of death. Right. And the operative word being real, not just imaginary, but something that, we all deal with in these mountain towns. I think the book, almost the entire time I was writing it, that was my working title. I had some other ones early on that weren't that great, that I won't mention.
They didn't make the cut, so you don't have to.
Yeah, the working titles for books are funny, and but generally better not mentioned.
But that specter, it's kind of always there at some level.
Yeah.
Front of the mind, back of the mind, it's in there. But that's changed too. It's kind of like your evolution of, your family life and priorities and all that, which actually kind of goes hand in hand, because then you're kind of like, I'm going to have to think about this stuff more, right? I mean, naturally. I have others that are counting on me and loved ones. And that avalanche changes. Can you talk about how that
there's that, but going backwards for a minute, avalanche is also symbolic of just this kind of avalanche of emotions, avalanche of problems,
right?
Avalanche of solutions,
right?
Hopefully,
right.
And so that's a lot where that avalanche stuff comes from. You know.
But the danger itself, like how do you, that
Yeah.
used to be like, you know, it's kind of like big wave riding, like it was a rush, like it was like you're younger, you were going for the rush, right? We're going for the adrenaline. And then, but then, you know, so the Avalanche played a role that risk was there, which
Yeah.
drove adrenaline, excitement,
Yeah,
right? And how does that change over time?
Well, it does, and I can look back through my life, and I know that early on, which is a lot of us have experienced this. Maybe almost every person who's done risk sports, you experience this kind of, you know, cheating death syndrome that can be a real, you know, kind of a good rush.
Right,
you know,
right.
Or it is a good rush.
It's kind of an ego thing too.
Yeah,
right?
sure, it can be.
Yeah.
You know, I think it depends on the personality. Some people are pretty humble about it, but it's still a rush.
Right,
And you
right,
still get addicted.
right.
And other people maybe aren't so humble. I think for me, there was a time I don't think I was so humble about it. I was like, you know, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to conquer this stuff,
Right.
and I'm going to be good at it. You know, there was that to develop myself as a craftsman and an athlete. But you know, as things progress, the value system changes, and if it doesn't, then you've got a problem.
Right.
Especially, you know, if you're going to have a long life doing this stuff. Now, there's a lot of people out there who, in their youth, they do some rock climbing or skiing avalanche terrain, and then they just segue out of it, you know, and then go into stuff that's maybe, well, like you've done, you know, where you go into the athleticism and the great feelings of the endorphins and the accomplishments of being a good athlete, but you're not so much challenging death, you know, at every turn.
Right.
And I think that's very healthy. You know?
It's working so far.
And I certainly did that myself over the years, although not to the extent that you have, you know, because I continued to ski avalanche terrain and ski tour in Europe. And then in 2010 went back to Denali and skied it with my son. And so, I definitely, in my case, I'm what you'd call the committed lifelong alpinist. You know, and that's just, and really I embarked on that when I was 9 years old, when I climbed my first peak in Colorado with my dad and a couple other boys from Texas. And ever since that day, when I was 9 years old, I've been an alpinist.
I like how you start the book with that, you know, the early years,
Yeah.
pretty quickly moving into that first Colorado experience that
Yeah.
you mentioned, the 12,000-foot grassy hill or something, I think you called it, in the Sawatch.
Yeah, which to a 9-year-old boy
12,000
from
feet's still pretty big.
yeah, well, to a 9-year-old boy from Texas,
Right.
felt pretty big. And,
With
you
your
know,
metal canteen that
Yeah.
water tastes like metal coming out. It's like one of those old Boy Scout
yeah, those
canteens, right?
Yeah, the
Old
ones you
school.
could get at the Army surplus store with the green cover on it that had
love it.
the thing that clipped to an ammo belt.
You didn't even have a backpack yet. You were just kind of tied your
Yeah,
jacket around the
kinda.
waist, kind of.
Tied the jacket
Do it
around
that
the
way.
waist and hiked it. There wasn't a trail really. It was just all gravel and dirt and stuff.
So that really, obviously, that grabbed you. Like that was the aha.
Yeah, it
kinda,
did,
They
and
talk
what-
about these aha moments or pivotal moments in
It
life.
did, and you know, it's a funny thing with memoir because you use every tool in the book, no pun intended.
To make the book.
Yeah, you know, and one of the tools you use is the photographs. And my father was a photographer, and he caught a picture of us boys on that peak sitting on the summit.
Yeah, you had that
And-
sweet hat on.
Yeah, and ever since those days in the 1960s, I'd had that photo kicking around, so it managed to reinforce the memory. And it's a hilarious photo. I've got it in the book, but we all have our barn coats on, and one boy has a Band-Aid on his forehead, you know, because we were camping, and you know, boys when they're camping, they're always going to end up with a Band-Aid on their forehead.
It's just a matter of how many injuries
So
there will
are
be
the-
and
yeah.
at what level. How
So are the
serious
girls
they?
too. Everybody's going to end up, you know.
gosh.
But
Boys
you know,
will be boys.
and then I had this awesome hat that I'd gotten for a hayride, I think, at our school. That was like one of those straw cowboy hats that was kind of domed up,
Oh man.
you know, with a sticker, like a pin on it that said "Viva Texas" or something.
That is a riot. That is a riot.
Yeah.
So that must have got the juices flowing to like move to Colorado, obviously.
Yeah. My father was friends with a guy named George Perry, who was famous around town here in the 60s. He owned the Whale of a Wash,
Oh yeah.
laundry.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
George
got here a
owned the
little
Whale
after
of a
that.
Wash, and he was instrumental in the yacht deal up at
Aspen
Root
Yacht
Eye.
Club.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was a ski instructor at Highlands. He was a real man about town, kind of on the level of a Dave Farney and all those guys, and a Klaus.
Yeah.
And so my father knew him, and he wasn't. We moved from New Jersey to Dallas, and Texas was actually pretty cool. My father was into exploring, going down to Big Bend and stuff like that. But Dallas was not the mountains. Right. And my dad, he did love the mountains, and he had this friend up here in Aspen, so we would come up and visit and camp, and kind of range around. We'd be over by Leadville, up in Tin Cup, and Independence Pass, up Castle Creek, and he was really into exploring old mines.
Very cool.
Which in those days there
Wow.
was tons of really cool stuff to do with the old mines.
Wow.
I mean, the tailing piles were raw, and you could pick ore out of the tailing piles, and a lot of it was private land, but it wasn't posted, so you could just go up in these mines. We didn't go in the mines much, but there were all kinds of cool structures, and it was really cool stuff for for preteen boys. It was really compelling.
Your dad sounds remarkably like my dad, who was just such a big outdoorsman and such a massive influence, and
Yeah,
to be able to introduce you to all those
yeah,
kinds
and
of
my
adventures.
book is, fathers are important to memoirs a lot of times, and my dad certainly is in my book, but it was a mixed deal. My father had some real problems.
Yeah.
He was a 10th Mountain Division veteran, but he was one of the few and the not proud that deserted from the 10th Mountain Division while he was at Camp Hale.
Okay.
And that caused an enormous amount of strife within our family over the years. He went to jail. He was in Fort Leavenworth military prison for a year and a half. And after that, he was somewhat damaged, and had a lot of trouble over the years with financial responsibility and being the father to his kids. And of course, I write about that stuff in the book.
Right.
But the going to the mountains and getting the mountains good tidings for me was a big part of healing and dealing with that part of our family.
Right.
So, and then eventually experiencing a lot of forgiveness for who he was and what he did over the years.
Right.
And the mountains had a lot to do with that forgiveness. Just experiencing, because he did love that stuff, and that's why he volunteered for the 10th.
Right.
And as I started doing it, for a long time I was kind of in denial about his involvement in mountaineering, he wasn't a technical climber or anything, but he did a lot of hiking and stuff like that. But eventually I started to feel the feeling that what I was doing when I was out there, and this was when I was past middle age, I started feeling, well, while I'm doing this, God, this is the stuff my dad would have loved. And I'm starting to relate to his feelings.
Yeah.
And it was all coming through the mountains and being out there mountaineering. And where it really came to a head is when I did this recreation of the Trooper Traverse, which was when the 10th Mountain Division soldiers in 1944 skied from near Hale. They skied over to Aspen.
Right. Right.
And me and a couple other guys did this recreation where we wrote an article for Skiing Magazine.
Oh, cool.
And I dug out all the old archives from the collection at the Denver Public Library and from the Aspen Historical Society. And
Incredible.
since then, a lot of people have kind of gotten in on that deal with the recreations of the Trooper Traverse, is what I started calling it. But we were the first guys at that time to recreate it. I was 2000. No, when was that? It was a while ago. But I've got a whole chapter in the book about it, and that was quite a good adventure. But at the same time, it was an emotional adventure, because it was all about the 10th Mountain, division, and the guys that were on that trip. And one kid named Bud Winter was on that trip and was exulting in it, and had sent these letters home about how amazing it was to ski over the Continental Divide. And these guys took a really aggressive route for those days. I mean, it was world-class stuff. Really, really hardcore. In February, you know, when it's just mega avalanche danger and really cold. And this kid, I call him a kid because he was just I think he was just 18 when they were doing the traverse. But he went over to Italy and to fight and didn't come back. You know, and all the time doing those traverses and stuff like that, I just always think about that guy, Bud, you know, Birdell Winter. His mates called him Rugged Winters.
Rugged
Winters. He
Winters.
was so strong.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
Wasn't the tail, I mean, so you're using the original equipment too?
No,
when you guys did the recreation?
No, not for that
Now you're not
recreation,
the
but
roll-
I have skied on the original 10th Mountain stuff.
Okay.
And how that came about was when I was much younger, I was a Knowles student.
Okay.
And I eventually became a Knowles instructor, and I've got a lot of stuff about that in my book. But during my summer Knowles course, Petzold and his cohorts were pushing this New Year's Eve climb of the Grand Teton. And it was like, yeah, you can sign up for this thing. And, you know, there were probably 20 of us teenage kids, and then the Knowles instructors go up there and during December, moving on into January, and we try to climb the Grand Teton and make the climb on January 1st. Well, it was ridiculous, you know. It was literally that one night a storm cleared up. We were camping, snow camping up on the Teton, halfway up the thing. The temperature went to 58 below zero.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was amazing. But in any case, Paul Petzold, the guy who founded Knowles, was really into this thing of budget mountaineering, where you could do everything with a good sweater, basically. You know, you know. Yeah.
Oh man.
But in any case, for this winter stuff, he'd found all this Army surplus ski gear, which was 10th Mountain vintage stuff. Oh man. It was the white skis.
Yeah.
You know, they were fairly wide planks, hickory planks, as stiff as a 2x4, and then those boots, like those guys wore, that were basically, they looked like the boots Frankenstein wore, you know, with the big square toes.
Right.
And a single boot, no warmth, so we fit the boot so we could wear 3 thick pairs of wool socks inside the boot.
Right, because there's no insulation
Yeah,
in these things.
and we're
basically.
ski touring up there, it's below zero.
Oh man.
You know, and we had skins on the skis. It was the first time I'd ever used climbing skins. They strapped on with straps, not glue. So we go up Garnet Canyon, did that camp, and couldn't climb. It was too cold, you know.
Jeez.
And it was insane. And,
That sounds
and then
crazy.
coming back, we're skiing down Garnet Canyon, and there were a couple of pitches that you actually could shush down through, you know, but that ski gear you couldn't really turn on. And I was from Aspen, and I wasn't that great of a skier, you know. I wasn't born skiing like a lot of folks around here are, but I applied myself when we moved there, and I learned to ski fairly well. But because I was from Aspen, everybody thought I was supposed to be like this, you know, god of skiing,
Ski
right?
god. Not so much.
Yeah, so we're going down this one pitch, and the instructor, you know, we all stopped, and everybody's staring at it the same way you do on Top Island Bowl. Only this thing was probably, you know, a couple hundred yards, you know, deep Teton powder with a lot of depth hoar underneath.
Oh.
Instructor goes, you know, go for it, Aspen.
Aspen
I'm
guy.
like, yeah, I'm like, oh no, because I knew what was going to happen. Start down, I couldn't make a turn on those skis. Just picked up speed and just kept going down into that snow until the skis just sunk in that depth hoar.
Oh, jeez.
Ended up pile driving my head about 3 feet into the snow with the pack behind me, you know, to act as the pile driver weight.
Oh man, talk about a face plant. Huh?
And everybody's howling, you know.
Good that you could be their entertainment.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, it was
get a
like the
few laughs.
ultimate face plant.
Oh my gosh.
You know, no better face plant has ever been accomplished.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that equipment was not exactly made for high performance
No, to
turning and
yeah,
skiing like that.
You had to be a world-class athlete to turn those skis.
Yeah.
And what they normally did, like when they were training, when the division soldiers were training, and my father did train with them, and I remember him talking about it. They would kick, turn, and traverse, and maybe shush down a little moderate hill and learn to do a stem turn.
Right.
But there was, the stuff you see Dick Durant's and those guys doing, that was very elite skiing to do on that gear, to be able to make those kind of beautifully executed long radius turns.
Those skis were long too, right? They were like 7-8 feet.
Well, they
long,
would,
super long,
two
super
tens were short,
Okay.
considered to be short, and that's a hand width above your head, I think, at least.
Yeah. Oh my God.
No, more than that. Yeah, the way they, I guess I'm old enough to share some stuff the younger listeners might not be aware of, but the way you sized a ski in those days is you put it next to you, and if you could wrap your hand over the tips, that was a good length.
That was it?
Yeah. So yes, we were talking.
So date that time.
7.5 foot for a guy, who's 5'10", 5'11", like me. Yeah, definitely.
So when was that? Like era?
In the 70s.
In the 70s, okay.
In the 80s, the skis got a little shorter.
A little shorter, but we were still on pretty long skis. That's when I arrived and
yeah, you
dropped
were
in.
still on. You would have been on a 210 probably.
Exactly.
Same here.
Exactly. I had some Super G 215s.
Yeah.
We even used to goof around with downhill skis,
Sure.
the old atomic,
Yeah, you get some
downhills on a powder day.
Buy them off the race team.
Right.
Yeah, good old days.
Oh my gosh! And now it's shorter, shaped. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but
yeah, we're not going to get
kind of going back to the book.
We don't want to get too into gear.
There are so many amazing adventures in here, to put it lightly. And it's written in such a real. I'm only a couple chapters into the book because I just got it, but and I got it at Explorer here in Aspen a couple weeks ago. It was one of the last copies they had.
Yeah,
actually.
thanks Explorer for carrying it.
Oh yeah, and I had a nice conversation with the lady who was working there, and
cool.
She talked about your book signing that you had there. Was that a month or two ago?
Yeah,
a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. So that's one spot. Where else can people find the book? Can they find it on Amazon? And
Amazon, Carl's, and Explorer's a nice place to buy it because they're into books.
Yeah, I love it.
And then my website's loudawson.com, and there's some purchase links on there. It's pretty easy to come by.
Right.
Right.
And what's your main mission with the book, Lou? I mean,
Well, I get asked that a lot when you're a memoirist. It's a common question, and I think part of it is I'm a writer, and part of it was just the creative inclination. It's like somebody deciding to paint a painting.
Right.
That's a great part of it comes from that. But there's some takeaways in there: forgiveness, family, the fact that surviving near-death experiences isn't necessarily the end goal in alpinism, But on the other side of that, the fact that alpinism can be a beautiful thing, all the way from the spiritual down to the physicality. So and that's all in there. And then I think it was just fun to, fun's the wrong word, but I felt very compelled to basically share a life, and not from an egotistical standpoint. Just I thought, I definitely have some stories to tell, and some of the stories have been told before, just a few of them, but they were good stories, and by telling those stories, I was able to honor some individuals too, who I really appreciate. Like already mentioned Petzold, but there was guys like Harvey Carter in there, who was a pioneer climber who lived here. And then you had Fritz Stomberger. Yeah. And then you go back behind that, and I mentioned Bill Dunaway and the 10th Mountain Division veterans who lived here. And so, when I got into writing the book, I actually was pretty enthused about how I was able to bring all these individuals into the story, because they were part of my story.
Right, kind of give credit where credit's
Yeah, I
due
didn't really
and
have to
acknowledge
effort at it. It was like they were already there,
Right.
and so that was a good positive part of doing that.
Right.
But
Give those guys their shout out, as we say in modern.
they were
kinda
shouted
lingo.
out, and
Acknowledge them and keep the history alive, right? It's
Yeah,
also
and-
about that, right?
yeah, and I felt compelled to put down some history,
Yeah.
and I did do that. There's quite a bit of history in there,
Right.
both local and national stuff.
For me, like when I pull away fundamentally and kind of looking at these years now, for me, I'm lucky 42 years in Aspen. Moved here in 82 and never looked back.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty good.
actually landed here on my 21st birthday, no less. So
Yeah.
that night alone is a whole show, Lou. With my buddies from Wisconsin, you can imagine.
Yeah, you got to get your Wisconsin buddies back here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of them are still here. They made it like I did.
They did?
Never looked back. Most
Wow.
of them, of course, like most people have left, in Aspen in general. But what was I going to say is the ride is amazing. Like, it's like you go out and ski powder and it's like, wow, that was awesome. And say you're doing it by yourself or, whatever you're doing. But when you can bring others along for the ride,
Yeah,
whether it's that day or through a book,
yeah.
right? Isn't that 10X? That's
Yeah, well,
where-
that's really cool you mentioned that, because you'll see there's a theme in my book about sharing.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I became a guidebook writer.
Yeah.
My writing career, other than my website, wildsnow.com, was very successful. And that covered the gamut of backcountry skiing. But my printed book career is almost all guidebooks. And the motivation for those guidebooks, beyond attempting to have a career as a writer, was to share. And the same thing with my career in outdoor ed and guiding. And I thought my career was going to be outdoor education for years, for quite a few years, for about 6 years, and I did a lot of guiding, and it was all about feeling like these experiences were worth sharing.
Yeah.
And indeed, that's you'll see that when you're in the book, that comes through in there too.
I need to make a little more progress in the book, and
And-
I'm making more progress athletically outside. I'm not
But it
making-
does result in some funny stories too, some of which shall not be told. But some are told, like the time me and a guy named Larry Bruce, who was a climbing partner, we guided a guy up El Capitan, and that's a good little story in there.
You want to tell it really quick here?
No, we're
or
gonna leave
We'll
that
save
for-
it. We'll save it for the book.
We're going to leave that for the readers.
Well, what I wanted to touch on was another one of your books, Light Tours of Colorado.
Oh,
because
yeah,
that's
cool.
an opportunity for people to kind of get into it, right?
Yeah,
get into backcountry
Yeah, I'm
skiing.
glad you brought that up. It's really important. I should have brought one with me. I didn't, but it's Light Tours of Colorado. And
Yeah.
what
Talk
it
about that a
is
little bit.
yeah, it's a guidebook for tours where you're generally going to have no avalanche exposure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds great.
And it was actually the first book of its sort for North America and maybe for the world.
Nice.
There was
Wow.
one other guy about the time I did that book, did a similar book for Norway. And he's a guy I know. I'd met him on a couple of press trips when I've been over there. And when his book came out, he'd seen mine, and we were laughing because we'd both come up with this idea, great minds think alike
On the
and all that.
wavelength, yeah.
But the story of the book is interesting because the company that publishes it, Compass, is it Compass? They changed their name, and I always forget. But anyway, the book's easy to come by. But the publisher had talked to me several times over the years, and I had a good reputation, and he's like, Lou, you really need to write something for us. And I was just not into doing another guidebook. I'd aged out of it, really. It's like to even update my 14-year guides was a little inappropriate. I needed to be the guy that was up there doing it to update the guides.
Right.
But at the same time, I was thinking, God, I should just write a guidebook for old guys, that don't want to get caught in avalanches.
Right. Or people just young, any
yeah, and of
age,
course
right?
it's not for old guys, but
Right.
figure of speech.
Yeah.
And so I talked to, it was Andy Sovics, the guy, and I talked about him, and he was skeptical at first, which he should have been, because he's going to invest some money in this thing.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I know this thing's got a market, And finally he took the leap, and it was his best-selling guidebook.
Nice.
And it's
there
been
you go.
it's been in 2 editions.
Wow.
And it's very basic, you know, there's not any big revelations in there. Like for you wouldn't find anything new, you know. But it's got some of the more established ski area uphills in there, so you know where to go if you want to travel around the state and do some uphilling.
Nice.
But then it's got, you know, it's got a couple of tours here. It's even got a tour outside of Rifle. It's got a couple of tours off the Front Range.
Awesome.
You know, it's got some stuff down around Durango. And it's just lower angled stuff where the terrain isn't really conducive to forming avalanche slabs and that sort of thing.
Right.
But it's been a really cool project, and you know, a lot more gratifying than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to kind of just be a one and done, but it's become sort of an entity in of itself.
I really like that idea because, like we were talking off cameras, there's a lot of people on the fence. Like, hey, would I want to try, you know, hiking, snowshoeing, backcountry skiing? There's got to be a way to get into it, you know.
Yeah.
And this is just, you kind of open the door.
Well,
you
and
know,
it's really
give them some
important.
good-
Like when I got married with my wife Lisa, you know, I had no intention of trying to drag her into this stuff when it's really dangerous.
Right.
You know, we did some stuff anyway where it might have been a little bit extreme and that sort of thing because we were young, you know, and she learned to ski good after she moved here. But as the years rolled by, and with a child too, I really was putting a lot of thought into how to get out and do this stuff and be with Lisa and not be doing anything stupid and creating a tragedy.
Right.
You know, and she was always inspirational in that way because she's super positive. So she was never bummed out about what we were doing, but it almost freed me because I didn't have to feel like she was judging anything. It just kind of freed me up to try to make the right decisions, which was kind of a cool dynamic when I think about it.
Well, shout out to Lisa for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what a amazing, positive, like you say, influence in your life.
Yeah,
And
she's been great, you know, and we're gonna, I think it's next year, we're on 40.
40th anniversary?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Well, early congrats on that.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
you're
so-
doing something right there. That's
Yeah.
pretty exceptional. We're down to just a few minutes already, Lou, and even on our 1 hour special here, we're going through the time here.
Yeah.
But, you know, safety is number one. Obviously, as guides, we sometimes joke safety third and all that stuff. I like to say fun and stoke are in first and second, but seriously, safety first. What are some tips, some backcountry ski tips? Our area has leads the nation in ski-related avalanche death.
The top tip that I always talk about is on a lot of people's part, there's a misperception about how dangerous this stuff is. It's very dangerous. As you were alluding to, we've had over 60 avalanche deaths in Pitkin County over the span of years in the past. And if you count the deaths during the mining era, you could probably triple that easily. But a lot of people, they see what we do up in Highland Bowl and that sort of thing, and they get a sense that they know it's dangerous, but they just don't know that it's that dangerous.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most important things, and that's why, going to an avalanche class and that sort of thing, and talking to people who know something about it and getting some good role models really helps. People are cautious. And then you can get a sense of actually what are you getting into here. Because when you think about it, it can get a little ludicrous. I mean, you get with your friends, say, especially your loved ones, and you go out ski touring. And you're all standing at the top of a slope, and you're talking about whether you should ski this slope or not.
Exactly.
If the slope slides, chances are somebody's going to die. And you're sitting there just talking about it like it's some kind of little, fun little game to play to choose to ski this slope or not. Well, basically, you don't want to play that game. You need to be in the game where you're a lot more certain, or you're picking the terrain that's a lot safer, rather than trying to sort of rationalize what you're skiing. And other than maybe the phase when you're in your 20s, you're not married and don't have a significant other, and you're testing yourself and that sort of thing. And I'm not one to judge that, because that was me when I was in my 20s. But I think you kind of should, you owe it to yourself and the people around you to move through that phase, get what you're going to get out of it, and then move on to the next. In terms of just the basic safety stuff, having the right gear, if for no other reason, having the shovel, the beacon, I think everybody should have an airbag pack if they're in avalanche terrain. That stuff, if nothing else, helps inculcate an attitude that you're in a dangerous place.
Right.
It's not as effective in saving your life as you'd like it to be. And if you get out of denial, you can look at the statistics and go, well, I've got a beacon and an airbag pack, but I better not get caught in that avalanche. So anyway.
Well, we're going to have you back on the show, buddy, because even that 1 hour went so fast. And
yeah, it did.
We got to most of the notes, and
yeah.
I'm so glad we had a chance to introduce people to Avalanche Dreams, too.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's just like I said, I'm just getting into it. I'm an honest guy. Not a big book reader, but I'm going to rip through this book.
Well, there's
kind of like a rip through Power.
Yeah, there's an audio book. There's an audio book. There's an e-book. There's the printed book.
Okay.
So
Ooh,
in the audio book,
different ways to do that.
We have a good guy that did the audio book. He's got a good voice.
I might have to do that. Well, I did bake you cookies, Lou.
Yeah,
as
thank
we
you.
close the show.
Yeah.
Just a small token of appreciation. Did you have fun on the show today?
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you're good at it, man. So thank you.
Oh, you're good at it. And I just go for a ride. No pun intended. But I really enjoyed it. It was really an honor.
Yeah,
to
it was
have you.
good.
We'll have to have you back and let me know what you think about those cookies. That's organic chocolate chunk.
Oh my God.
And maybe at the top of a climb, as a reward.
Yeah. Well, maybe in a few minutes.
Or that. Thank you, Lou Dawson. Thank you guys for watching our season premiere of The Local Show. At the Wheeler Opera House, we set the stage for connections that create memories for our audiences, artists, and greater Aspen community. At the Wheeler Opera House, all are welcome. You're welcome to be a part of history.
Community is at the heart of Aspen, and I take great pride in being a part of it. I'm Chris Klug, and as a lifelong Aspen resident, my connection to this community runs deep. My involvement in local events and charities isn't just about giving back. It's about staying in tune with the community I love. Allow me to help you find your place in our incredible community together.
Join the string beans in helping reduce food waste in our community.
Plan menus carefully and only buy what you need.
Collect unused scraps for compost.
Ask for smaller portions in restaurants.
Take home leftovers to eat later.
Donate unopened food to our food bank.
Let's work in concert to reduce food waste.
Sundog Athletics, Aspen's adventure sports school and snowshoeing specialists since 1996.
Welcome to the local show. People you work with, people you know.
I think GrassRoots is really important to the survival of this place as a community. And even more importantly, on a sort of a national scale, GrassRoots is part of an effort to create public access, people access to the public airways, and is therefore a very powerful tool and people being able to talk to people on a broad scale. If we depend only on commercial television, then the special interests are the only people who will be able to communicate to the public. In this way, people can communicate with people.